Hope your battery runs.
Just adding a little bit, I mean, we sort of use the terminology of values-driven leadership, you know, is because an organisation is a reflection of its leader, too, and all its leaders, you know. So if you've got a business of branches and offices around the country, that localised leader has massive influence, and so it takes on of that leader. And one of those videos earlier today we sort of shared, gee, how we can change people's lives. And I'll share a couple of situations, because again, if we're called how we can impact, and I'll share a couple of stories that are going on at the moment for us. And so 2 weeks ago I got a phone call from Advanced Securities regional managers, which doesn't happen very often like this, and he rang up and he said, one of the girls had just come into the office, been in the office this morning, and she's just had a phone call from daycare to say her estranged partner has come and taken the child, and it's not going to bring the child back. And one of our directors on our main board is a lawyer, and so he said, oh look, do you think there's any chance Brendan could give her some advice or something like what to do? She's already run the police, and the police won't get involved because it's a joint custody situation. So anyway, I rang Brendan up. Brendan said, oh no, Mike, it's probably not me, it's family law and that sort of thing's a bit different. But we managed to get another lawyer involved, and so we pulled quickly a phone call together, me and this other lawyer and this lady and the RM, regional manager. Anyway, and the lawyer said, oh yes, look, we can instruct a barrister, we can put something through the courts now, and this woman, the lady says, so when will I get my little child back? Oh, this is going to take days to work through and stuff like this. So I said to the lawyer, I said, look, can we just go with a pragmatic approach? Well, the barrister rings up this guy and says, come on mate, this isn't the way we do this type of thing, And he said, oh, that's a bit unorthodox, but anyway, we could probably have a go at that. So anyway, so that's what they did, And him and a barrister rang up the father and said, come on mate, The father said, well, you need to ring my lawyer. So the fact is we had the child back at 3:30 that day, So for something that costs very little from a financial thing, we have the ability to impact lives. And it's so easy to say, I'm sorry, we're too busy or can't help. But how do we actually make a massive difference? And the lady concerned rang me that night, to thank for our intervention in it. So, there's all these different situations in our journey where we can really change how someone goes home at night, and make a massive change. And it's not just in her life, it's in a child's life and different things like that as well, I'm going to Christchurch on Monday, which is we have a staff member who's suicidal down there over financial stresses and that, and so we're trying to work through a plan for him to sift the important from the unimportant and to navigate him through. So again, we have an ability to, when we're called to business to help in these situations, and that's one of the joys I get to do, is because I'm not stuck in the everyday bit of the business anymore. I can be that pastoral role and help people navigate those spaces at times. And we had another staff member years ago who had his own business and he got in a whole lot of debt with the Inland Revenue Department. And again, we were really concerned around his mental well-being. And so he was talking to me about it, and I rang the IRD up. I got a hold of his case person. And I said, well, I'm really worried about this guy's well-being. The threats and the bullying and all the stuff that's going on from you guys. And then we got to a place of understanding, and the lady at IOD said, look, you can tell him it will be all right, just keep communicating and do this and things like that. So it didn't cost anything to do that call. But again, we can take the leadership in these different situations at different times and have a profound impact, change somebody's life, a family's life, and yes, that's a bit, I guess, again, the placement we're called. So, all right. Hey, so step change. So when we first got professional directors, this is a pet of my chairman. He said, oh, that's wonderful, Mike, that you're looking to grow, but what's step change look like? Well, what's step change? Well, step change is coming along like this, and it's now like this, or hey, you're 80 million turnover, well now you're 120 the next year. What does it actually start to look like? What's those big steps, or what actually causes that massive step? And then you get this one sort of, well, why, but so step change is an interesting thing, and where's my laptop going flat? That's fine. And there's a bit of theory stuff around that. And I guess, how we drive that step change and there's different opportunities, and I'll go into some more practical, but, we have to help others to see the need for change through a bold, aspirational opportunity statement that communicates the importance of acting. And that's where a lot of our innovation stuff is allowing us to drive step change, but we have to communicate that. We've got to get people on board with that vision of where that's actually going and create an urgency around it. We've got to build the right team of people, the coalition of the willing and effective team to do it. That vision for change and what it's actually going to look like. We have to communicate the vision really well, and this is one of the things probably from my learning was probably I never did earlier in the business was communicated enough. It used to be like management meetings. I'd get up and at the start of our management meetings we have there's a half an hour and it's called painting the picture, and that's where I set the vision of the group and what's my front of mind and my heart and sort of where we're going, and we call that painting the picture, but that would be sort of every 6 months, and where our business has changed today, we're around using workplace and social media internally. It means we can do that every week or every day. So again, going through COVID, I'd just do a video that would go right out across to everybody, and we can communicate far more easily around different things. And the same thing around sharing the vision and where are we going and different things like that. But we need to take the whole organisation on the journey. And so this morning we were talking about innovation. But it's easy for a person just to talk about innovation, but does that mean it becomes an innovative organisation? And you have to develop an innovative culture. That means you've got to get everyone actually going the same way. And one thing we often have done in the past is here's a company, here's two companies. We often used to say this is a competitor over here, and here's us. And companies have dysfunction in them. Right? Some people are going around in circles, some are going backwards. Usually a couple actually know where the company's going. Right? And what we're trying to do is actually doing this by sharing the vision of where it's going. Sure, there'll be still a few that don't understand, but how do we communicate that vision all of the time? And I did a road trip across 20 offices late last year. It was pretty hard to share the vision of us for the next 3 years and where we're going. And you sort of think everyone's heard it. I'd already been sharing the vision for some time, but you can share it 50 times and still there'll be someone who actually they comprehend it for the first time or actually seemingly hear it for the first time, but the need to constantly keep on saying that and speaking it out is so important, because we need everybody to actually join part of that to drive change. And then it's about removing the barriers, about inefficient processes, and enabling the business to grow. And one of the big things we've had to do is have good delegations of authority down to people. So capital expenditure, so these people can actually get on and do it. So because otherwise I become the bottleneck, or other GMs and different people become the bottlenecks. How do we empower our people to get on with it? How, etc. And one thing we do on that is, which we'll talk about systems and that, is if one of our systems is broken, we say, there's a process for actually fixing it in our organisation, so we make the systems better all the time, about constant reinvention. Create quick change. What's those early wins and quick wins? Recognising them. And build on that change. Press harder and harder and harder to do that. So with innovative products, we find this actually quite hard, because often our people are used to selling certain things, and now they've got to sell something really innovative, and they love to gravitate to what they know instead of what's new. And so we need to push with that all the time. And largely we talk about it because we actually, if you look at it in the 20-year exercise, that's 3 years, we don't have a choice, we have to change. This is how we create long-term sustainable employment for our people, is by changing as an organisation and embracing these different things and driving step change. And about making it stick. Cool, so articulating the connections between new behaviours and your organisational success, making sure they continue till they become strong enough to replace the old habits and behaviours. Because a lot of the new innovation we're doing will totally disrupt a lot of the sectors that our businesses operate in. So once they get traction, they're huge, you know. Cool. So what I've got here is, are we still called to business? You know, in the early days, our business, we used to do a business plan every year. You know, probably a light regurgitation most of every year. And one of the questions was asking the business, why are we still in business? And I used to ask myself that every year. It came a bit of just to repeat itself in real terms, but and you know, a few times we've thought about selling out, and we had we've had, look, at some stages, sometimes we get 4 approaches a year by multinationals to buy us or buy pieces of us, and private equity funds to buy us, and going back a long time ago, probably in about 2006, we considered it. That was a lot of money, you know. But then again, you come to this test, well, am I still called here? And because there's a God piece here, so it's not just like a normal person, oh, it's just money. And actually, I'm actually called here. And anyway, and then in about 2011, 2012, we thought, oh gosh, it was at time, and my wife was probably saying, oh, look, it's time to get rid of these businesses, like, you know, why do you bought these businesses, you know? But anyway, bit of that. But me too. It was, we hit some milestones and revenue and years and business and different things like that. And so we engaged KPMG to go through a process, and we had all these private equity funds lining up to bid on us and bid it on us to buy a number of the businesses. And we sort of chose one. We were still going to have to be in have a share in it, because at the end of the day, they want to back someone. They don't want to have to. Private equity funds don't run your business. They actually just want you to run it, and they want to go along for the ride. They want to be the banker, you know. And so it was a lot of money. And you know, we carried on. You know, it started the process. We become obedient, going through the process too, to follow it through. And we got down to the legal sides. I'd already agreed all the money, and it's the legal agreements, and these huge, big legal agreements, and you just observe different things. It's just, you know, there's some things where they seem to go back on their word, and there was these little things that just, you know, just raised a few little concerns. You know what I mean? You sort of think, it doesn't quite sit with me, or, you know, that integrity piece and different things like that, and things get lost in translation with lawyers too. But, you know, anyway, I was sharing a couple of people this, you know, so, and then we went along to church and we had this prophetic speaker come. And we thought, oh, we should just go and get prayer, you know, because these little things that are standing up, you know, just, you know. So my wife and I got prayer, and I've never heard this prophetic speaker before. He said, oh, we're thinking about selling our business. He said, no! The answer's no! You're not to sell your business! Teresa and I were bawling our eyes out, oh, you know. And anyway, it was one of those moments though, you know, because again, we're called to business. And I thought, oh, you know, gosh, that's interesting, isn't it? Because we still had to pay KPMG. and we didn't have to pay success fee, we had to pay all costs. And I think it was $300,000 costs, you know. And we paid them a retainer for some of it, and then there was this big payment we had to make just on costs, so it was none of their success fees. And anyway, but no, we had to be obedient. And so I remember we were going to Fiji for a week, which was something we'd pre-arranged. And we paid this money on the day before we left. You know? And I remember coming back, and we hadn't even missed that money in our cash flow at all, you know, just that was replaced, you know. But But yeah, look, it was an obedience thing, and we were still called to be there. And for me, it was a case, gee, if that's how clear God was for me in my situation, is I have to hear almost that to leave it, you know. And so it's been an interesting journey, because the journey for me has been that how do I be a good steward of the business too, and that sort of means how I keep on growing it and how I keep on being, you know, using the idea God's showing me, and look, and my dream for the business is actually to staff own it. That will be my dream, you know. You know, so who knows where the future comes. So it's a good question to ask. Are we still called for business? And you know, but there's no age on business either, you know. And it's yeah. Businesses change and businesses grow and they pivot and do different things, and so, but that's sort of my story there. So we still get hounded by private equity funds, and we still get approaches, and we still but hey, we're still in the chair, so to speak. So again, speaking of the vision we've talked about, and I guess that's one thing we've really been really strong in the business around. So. And I think, you know, in our management meetings, painting the picture to our management team of where we're going drove accountability for me too. You know what I mean? It was accountable to 40 managers. Well, Mike, you said we're going this way, it would drive me along too. But again, everyone I'd meet, I would say the same thing to. And again, when it comes out of our mouth, we hear ourselves, which is actually extremely powerful. I talked earlier about, you know, businesses too get to certain sizes. So what we see often with businesses and why businesses fail is it's driven around circus ringmasters. So in a circus, we have a ringmaster that commands the performance, right? So if a circus, if that ringmaster isn't there, what happens? The show doesn't go on. So in businesses, what we see often, and you see a lot of businesses that grow really fast, they'll grow, they might have a champion circus ringmaster, they might have 3 or 4 really good circus ringmasters, so the business can actually go to a reasonable size. But then they lose a circus ringmaster, they leave and go to another company, and the business starts to all fall apart, because the business hasn't been built on a platform, and there's a difference. So what we try to do with our businesses, it's all ISO, it's all systemised and everything like that. So when we add another business on, or we do an acquisition or something, we have a system to do it, or a process to do it. So what that means is we can go to scale. So it doesn't matter if we've got 21 offices or 45 offices. We can scale to that, and we have the recipe to do it and the system to do it. Make sense? So it doesn't hinge around the person. You know, so I can go for holiday for 3 weeks and my mobile phone won't actually ring, because there's a system in the business that works. The process, the audits, the, you know what I mean, non-conformance, customer complaint processes, everything, there's a system. And that's actually one thing that actually adds enterprise value to businesses too, because you've created something, you know. Businesses that actually revolve around a circus ringmaster don't end up being valued at a lot, because it's all around one person. So if you can build a system and a platform, especially if you plan to sell the business in a few years, the business can actually be worth a lot more money, you know. So we're all about that, how we create a platform. And that allows you in the end to actually get out of the business, to be on the business, because you know the platform is actually running the business. Does that make sense? Otherwise you need lots of really good circus ringmasters, you know, and we use this language all the time in our business, you know, and we see it in our competitors, you know, we often, in a nice way, so he's a really good circus ringmaster there over there, you know, but we know that it's not sustainable. Until they change and move to platforms, it's not sustainable. Makes sense? Any questions around that? You know what we're meaning by that?
How did,
a little bit more about.
I was going to say, how did you go? Well, I know you had an acquisition near the start, but how did you go from that one-man band, circus ringmaster of one, to a few staff, to then actually moving to that platform?
It might sound stupid, but even when it was just me, I had a platform to manage myself. It just wasn't as big a platform as what we have today. And I came from companies like United Group and Electrics that were ISO and had big systems and platforms. And I created our own one based off that, the learnings I'd had. That's one of the great things when you go and work for a corporate and then work for yourself. You learn some things about big business which are actually quite valuable, you know, on how big businesses actually operate, that as you scale, you apply those disciplines and different things like that.
So what were some of those systems that you had in place for yourself?
So as an example, when I strapped the tool back on and I was the one employee pulling cables, I had a daily job card that I would manage myself, like how many hours, who the customer, what the materials I was going to use, and that would feed through into my invoicing process. Now that took us through for years and years and years and years and years, that same form till we had many people, you know. But these types of tools allow you to grow, so when you have another employee come on, they'll use that same form, you know. But so it starts off with a few things like that until you get bigger and bigger. But if you are about growing a business, the sooner you get a system and a platform to do that, the actual better, because otherwise you come unstuck. You know, even like capital expenditure, as soon as you get a couple of offices, you'll find people are just going and buying things. Well, actually, unless you have policy and structure and ways to manage them, you know.
Within your company, how do you make policy a living, interactive document as opposed to the rules that people forget to look at?
So we have staff handbooks where we reference a lot of it, but it's all in SharePoint today. We have the internal leadership training courses, so we have induction processes. So everyone who comes into the company is inducted for a process. They get trained on the different platforms we have and how to interact. They can go into those platforms and just search what they want to do, and the relevant thing will come up. And it's quite interactive, where if you download a form or a process and it's rubbish, we say print it out, we'll draw all over it and send it back, and we will look at changing it and making it better. It's that continual improvement process. But it's we have internal audits around it too. We have external audits as well around compliance in our systems. But it means you get confidence that you're sustainable, because it's actually what runs the business in the end, you know. Again, otherwise you need good circus ringmasters who remember to do that and remember to do that. And you're trying to get away from that. Again, that's why businesses grow here and stop. Because the circus ringmaster can't be in 50,000 places at once. You know? So, makes sense? And it's not that hard, you just start from somewhere. In a lot of ways today you can even buy a lot of that stuff online, and all these business systems quite cost effectively, and start to implement and create that platform.
You talked about ISOs. Can you expand on that a bit more?
Yeah, ISO or ISO is different international standards around management system, health and safety, and environmental. And so there's 7 overarching principles of ISO quality management, from customer engagement to all different things. And then all our normal policies and procedures and forms, right through to, if there's an electronic timesheet, through to a CapEx form, to a policy around donations or whatever it is like that, are all linked back up into those overarching things, right? And so under ISO, so we have quarterly quality meetings where we're reviewing what's working, what's not working, organisation feeding back into it. It gives us a basis to audit. Our leave forms come through automatically through those systems. So it's all an online platform today. But again, it allows us to go to scale. Again, otherwise businesses will go so far and then the wheels fall off. It's too hard.
So the ISOs are basically setting the standards.
International standard, yeah. Yeah, so our quality one is ISO 9001, in the 2015 is the issue of it. And there's multiple international standards we're certified. So we actually develop the system. You get companies that come in and help you put that structure in, the overarching piece, but then you've got to link all the other pieces up into it, and then they audit you, and then you have to comply with that, and you build your system out from there. It helps. In government, it does help to win work too. A lot of stuff we do is we don't have to provide all the health and safety because we're already audited to a lot of these international standards. So But it's all largely around continuous improvement on how we keep on keeping on. But again, it's so easy to buy another business or add something on because you have the platform. Otherwise, in the end, it all just starts to fall over. You know, revolving too much around people. Make sense? Yeah, so that's a big, huge thing that allows you to grow with the business. So step change, so like my chairman would say, you know, what's this going to be? What is the growth sort of thing? And that's one of the things we move to different governances is that, you know, they probably take a little bit of a focus. For us, it isn't all about growth and actually, from a money side of it, it's about the whole culture and our people and different things like that. So it's about having that balance. But equally, I'm a believer that, you know, if we're a steward of a business, it is about growing. If it's not growing, it's actually dying, right? And someone said to me, even in a recession, you may have to work a bit harder, but you should be able to grab a 5%. You know? So how do we be intentional around that? Because that creates job security. Ultimately, people want to work for an organisation that's actually growing, that's exciting and going somewhere where they have a hope in the future. You know? So when you set a vision and say that's where you're going, then you become a magnet, ultimately, in an industry or sector that people want to work for you. That's what I believe, you know. Again, this is a day where you take gems of information and you might agree and you might disagree. But, so acquisition has been really good for us. And been good for the vendors and good for the people. So we're about engaging people when we acquire businesses and taking them on the journey, and they have to understand our vision. And so we'll talk a little bit around acquisitions. And this is sort of Mike invented stuff, like most stuff. There's 5 stages to an acquisition. So in the AS business, advanced business, we've acquired 8 companies in there, I think. And they've all been really successful. Some of those businesses have been very troubled businesses, on the brink of going broke. Others have been successful businesses, you know. It doesn't matter what they are, the same rules apply. And so I believe there's 5 stages. So one of the good things when you go and buy a business is, and it's in the same sector you're in, it's a step change, isn't it? You know, so here, bang, 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 straight on top. So there's these 5 stages, and the first stage is willing buyer, willing seller. That is actually the hardest stage, right? Because have you got a genuine buyer, have you got a genuine seller? And we call it the trust stage too, because that's when trust is actually established. Are the values the same, right? Are they honest? Are we honest? That's that termination, you know, the stakeholders go through. And what we usually do here is we give the 3 names of 3 vendors that we've bought companies of. And so the purchaser can go and talk to those people, ask them anything they want, and it's confidential between them. We never usually find out. And it's the most important stage of buying a business. The second stage is price, and that's the second hardest. It's actually, in some ways not, but yeah, second hardest. The third stage is when we get into that sale and purchase agreement, the legals piece. We always warn vendors when we're in discussion around buying a business is that, no offence Andrew, lawyers can get in the way. And our rules of engagement is that if we ever talk about something verbally and the lawyers are not singing that same song, you pick up the phone and talk, because there's something lost in translation on the paths through the, you know, that happen. So our word is our word, and yeah. The next one here is what we call due diligence. So due diligence is when you're really going out to determine what are you actually buying here, what are the contracts, how's the work priced, and is the business sustainable? And there's different things. So there's legal DD, there's financial DD, and when we do financial DD, what we do is we get 3 years of GST returns, 3 years of POE returns, the tax accounts, and we reconcile those together, and they generally will line up with NCUI of what the tax accounts say. That's one of our financial DD things. And in the current trading year too, we do the same thing too. So we look at what the current P&L is, and then we reconcile that with the GST and POE returns to work back to what the profit of the business is. Does that make sense? Pretty easy, eh? And then our DD focus is we have a, because again we've created a platform, we have a standard list of due diligence questions that we send to the vendor, and so they know what they're walking into when it comes to DD day. And then usually we do DD actually on a Saturday, and we have a team that comes in and we work through that, and obviously the vendor already knows all the questions anyway. And that's all the worst of it. And then there's usually a few days of tidy up after that, and then we usually go like unconditional at that point, and then we work through the staff consultation piece. Right. So acquisitions require, good faith from lots of different people. Good faith from the purchaser, good faith from the vendor, and good faith from the staff too, because there's a whole lot to work through. And most companies that get sold are often sold on an assets basis. So what it means is the vendor comes along, they're buying the fixed assets and the vehicles and different things like that, and the stock, and the rest is made up of goodwill up to the purchase price. And the other way is it's a share purchase, but share purchases are obviously a lot more complicated because of the liabilities a company has, and for share purchase you're taking on the liabilities. So hence why it's a lot more involved around the legal and warranty statements to make sure there's not debts outstanding in their revenue or creditors and different things. So when you buy a business on an assets basis, you're not buying the creditors and the money owed, but you also don't get the debtors that are owed to the business, the customer. Yeah, so that makes sense.
Mike, do you ever revisit price after you've done DD?
We never have. We have always paid what we've offered day one.
Because you could discover something that you didn't understand before.
Yeah, look, there's one we were doing last year, which we were happy to pay the money, but something came up with the risk profile of the customer base, that one customer had 70%, and what we asked around that is that really they needed to go and get that customer contract signed due to the size of it, otherwise it would be a problem. But one of our things is always trying to go into it eyes open. If we know the sectors, we generally have got a lot of intel anyway around the business.
Have you ever pulled out after doing DD?
The one late last year, that deal fell over. We let the vendor out because really they just they weren't ready, so that was a good faith thing that we let them out. But we've never, apart from that, we've always transacted after DD. So the DD process is getting those checks and balancings and understanding the business. And now what we do on that is we have a document called a snapshot document, and this is actually one here for a company we bought. And it goes through because and it's a really good exercise. Even if it's just you, it's a really good exercise, because this goes to our board and it says, this is an introduction and this is what this business is actually about. And this is what it does. So you're taking the board on a journey, and what's the reasons? What's the strategic reasons why we really buy it? Because anyone can just go and buy a business. It's a bit like, any idiot can price something, but it takes more than an idiot to actually do it. I mean, why are we actually really buying it? Can we actually, and I'll use the terminology add value, but I'm not meaning from a money side. I'm saying, can we bring our systems to it? Can we bring our relationship with Microsoft or Spark to it? Can we, our nationwide footprint of offices, does that bring more opportunities actually to that business? And does the business we're buying actually bring smarts and things we don't have, and technology and customer relationships that we don't have? You see what I mean? Are they really complementary? Is it a complementary fit? you know, and these are really, really important things, you know. Can we really grow that business? So when we stand in front of those staff and say, this is who we are, they go, oh yeah, I can see that, and I can see that we can really go and become this, because that's a good fit, isn't it? You know what I mean? And this is what we often see with multinationals. They'll come in and buy a company and they destroy it in weeks, because they're not looking for that. That's just the big boy coming into town. Let's just get rid of that competitor. But you're going into it in good. We go into it in good faith perspective. Say, well, gee, how do we actually add value to that? How does it add value to us? How does it make us collectively stronger? You know, how does it create opportunities for people? And then we look at the numbers, and there's always, for instance, things on numbers, and there's savings and cost savings. And so we look at, for instance, you know, we have a group insurance policy. So that usually means we don't have to have individual policies down here, which are savings straight away. You know, these are different things like that we work through. Then we look at what the earnings of the business is, and there's different ways to value a business. So who's bought a business? Few? Yep, cool. So you're probably used to different ways of valuing businesses. I mean, the way we do it is that we always get an independent valuer, and then we value it ourselves. We do not tell the independent valuer any idea what we think it's worth, and we usually always pay higher than what they say anyway. But it's a way of testing our thinking and things like that too. And so we either base it on earnings before proprietors income, or we turn into what we call EBITDA, earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, amortisation. So and we value it both ways. And obviously it depends on the type of business. If it's a bigger business, it's usually all on EBITDA and that anyway, or things like that. And then we apply a multiple to that. There's things like BizStats in New Zealand that gives you an idea of multiples for different sectors, and so we can build a pretty strong basis around it. We've usually always done asset purchases, so we leave the debtors and creditors with the vendor, and that always works, you know, pretty well. What we sort of get to, if we're a security company like we are, in the security sector we often buy, like advanced security, the advanced business is valued on an 8 to 9 times EBITDA multiple, so it's quite a high multiple. But we usually buy on a 3 to 5 multiple. Makes sense? So understanding a little bit, and we talk about levers and step change. If, let's say we're buying a business of 5 million turnover, and maybe let's say it's got, let's say $700,000 of profit. If there's 300,000 of costs that come out of it, so now it's $1 million, but we're paying 4 times the 700, that's $2.8 million, right? But there's 300,000 of strip out costs, so now it's $1 million, and times 9, that's worth $9 million to us. See what I mean? So that's how a lot of big corporates, listed companies, and why they acquire, because they build share value straight away. See what I mean? So I shared a couple. We were looking at a company which was part of a multinational. That was about 33 million turnover just in the last few months, and it's quite a broken business. So it's losing $1 million a year, and that multinational will sell that business even though it's broken for 4 to 5 million. But if someone fixed it, it's worth about 25 million, you know, and they're quite things. So interesting position in acquisitions if you have a recipe to do it. But you can see how companies build ultimately enterprise value, but how they make their business stronger. So one thing we just did is, coming out of COVID, so we approached 6 to 8 security companies around acquisitions here. But we're running into a bit of a Commerce Commission issue very shortly with the advanced business. So there's certain parts of the country we can't acquire, due to we would be too strong in the market, we'd have a monopoly, but South Island we still can. And anyway, so we looked at part of our strategy coming out of COVID. Again, we refused to participate in recessions. So how do we actually come out of this and make our business stronger and more sustainable? And guarantee all our jobs and these type of things. And our South Island business is a bit more project driven than some of the rest of the country, and it's still the most recent piece of the advanced business. So we've been about growth down there anyway, and so we reached out to a competitor. In 4 weeks, we had transacted all the business. So 1st of July, we transacted on 31st of July. And their accountant said, oh, it'll be pretty hard to do that. I don't think it's probably achievable. The lawyer said there's no way it can be done in that timeline. Well, we did it, you know. And yeah, but you can see that the change in a situation like this, what it actually does to our business, makes us stronger and more sustainable to weather the storms of things like COVID and things like that too. So what's the why, and why do we do this at different times, and how does it fit with our strategy are all really, really important things. So when we do an acquisition, there's 5 stages that go on from here. So we say this is post.
So I'm guessing number 5 is acquisition?
Yeah, transaction, yeah. Yeah. So then we have, right, and what I'll just say too is just before transaction is the staff piece, right? So what we do is, it's a big thing for business owners to sell their business, right? It's been your baby. In our businesses, it's been my baby, right? But, you know, from a faith perspective, you hold it lightly because it's, you know, God's in charge, you know? But there's still, you know, at times it can feel like you're hacksawing your left leg off too, because it's a lot of our identity when we've been the leader is in it too, you know what I mean? And so one of the last stages before transaction is the staff consultation piece. And the way we would usually do that is with the vendor. So the vendor would usually sometimes take a couple of people into confidence a few days before, but the staff should only ever find out, sadly, is when it's unconditional, because otherwise people worry about things they don't have to worry about too, right? Coming into this Maslow hierarchical needs, the security piece in that, they suddenly realise for 4 months the company's for sale. Oh gosh, people are already worried about that, right? In the case of us buying that, they've got nothing to worry about, right? So what we do is suddenly we're unconditional, we work with the vendor. The vendor, the owner might tell a couple of key people, and then we organise a time, and the vendor will talk to his people and say, hey, one thing I've been working on the last few months, and not due to confidentiality, we haven't been able to share it because it's so dangerous when staff hear early because it leaks. When it leaks, you lose contracts, and competitors use it against you and all sorts of things. So it's about doing the right thing for everybody and the business and customers. And so the vendor, and this is how we just did the one in the South Island, the vendor told a couple of staff the day before, and then on this Tuesday morning, I think it was, 8:30, he told all the staff he'd sold the business, who to. All the staff went and had a cup of coffee, and then we walked straight in. And then we do a presentation on who we are, why, and where we're going, you know, and there's a pack of information about who we are, and they hear about our culture and what we do and what we're about people, and they take away employment contracts with them, and they take all this sort of stuff, and they all get told they've got jobs. They don't have to worry about that, right? And they get told this is now confidential, but you'll now be working through discussions with you all over the next couple of days, because, you know, one of our learnings in acquisitions too, it's wrong to assume because someone's done that role for 10 years, they still want to do that role. So it's a great opportunity to have that discussion. And so, I know you're doing that role at the moment, but what are your other aspirations in the future? Because they might be wanting to break through some ceilings to become something else too, you know. And
Excuse me, Mike.
Yeah.
I've got to leave early, but top that, thank you very much.
You're welcome, Guy.
And we'll catch up this
Yeah,
week.
bless you, heaps, mate. So that's a process. We then give them contracts, we work through. Sometimes settlement will shift because the whole thing, the Employment Relations Act in New Zealand requires consultation, right? You have to consult, and staff need time to work through that. But the one we just did in the South Island all went on time, fine. So that's sort of the process. So then the deals happened. It's a new day. And so we rock up on the first day and say, congratulations, you will work for us now. And this phase here is about people and culture. The first thing we do is we have a session again around who we are, where we're going, and anyone's got any questions, and this is some of our systems now. There's a bit of introduction to some of those in our platform. And the other thing is, you know, hey, there's been a lot of change, and, you know, so, hey, all go out for dinner on us this weekend. So we send all staff with their families out for dinner on us. You know, so about engaging them in our culture, because that's actually who we are, you know, and so they understand who we are then. Does that make sense? So it's about people and culture. And then the next bit here is around business as usual. It's not about rushing. What corporates do, they rush in and change. What does that do? It disengages the people, disengages the customer. Customers follow people. You know, and so it's about, hey, even to the staff, it's business as usual. Carry on, do what we do. We have a different owner, but it's not about turning things off what we do. It's about how we engage and grow now. So about BAU. The third stage is learning. So how do we, the purchaser, learn about that business? And how does the people in that business learn about us? What do they do better than us? What happens in multinationals, they come in and they throw everything out. Do it our way. Right? And there has to be certain things of that. But that's not how you engage a team, and it's not how you integrate a business. So you have to learn, because there'll be things that that business will do better than how we do it. And how do we capture that learning back into our systems? Make sense? The next stage here is integration. So now the business is actually getting integrated in the systems that they did better are becoming our systems and reshaping our systems, and they're starting to use our systems. Make sense? And the last phase here, as we say, is transformation. We're a bigger, better, different, improved business. Often actually, even when it's something like AES, a lot more profitable and different things like that. You know, some of the business we've bought, we've put huge money back into training, and plant, and different things like that. So the business can look, you know, quite different. So these are the 5 stages. How long do you think that takes? Anybody?
2 years.
How long?
2 years.
Oh, good man. Perfect answer. 2 years. Right, that's what I believe. Now this bit here is really quick. This is actually immediate. This is the long one. This is the long one. And this is the quick one at the end. So because when you buy a company, or if you're integrating a company, it's about managing change. It's around learning and, you know, and having grace, you know, and as we bring it in, so to speak. And that's our experience. So, but yeah, they've always all been successful for us. And so that's a bit of a process there, I guess, around acquisition. And going back more into the snapshot thing we do, we go through, you know, how we're going to fund it, and we go through a risk analysis on it, which is really good, you know, and all of that is what we're really addressing in this process here on how we successfully integrate. But again, the benefit, the step change for acquisition is really, really huge, you know, in capability and absolutely everything. So that's it. So we've done 11 of those. There's a couple more we're looking at the moment. But it's a case of always lining up, like, again, what's the value we can bring into it? How does it fit? Is it within core of our business? And how does it fit? Does that make sense? Pretty easy.
How do you teach culture into the different businesses that you acquire?
So culture is something that you have to be absolutely intentional about every single day. All right? And we have a saying, what you walk past, you accept. All right? So if you've got bad behaviour, is you actually can't accept it, so you've got to coach them into saying what the right behaviour is. And so it's really important to train our leadership on what values-driven leadership actually is. So we're pretty anti around swearing, so we've got a big workforce, you know, but we don't like the certain words. We don't think that's actually professional in the nature of our business with our customers, and that's how we coach it. And so we have problems around that. We'll have behind the bike sheet conversations. We'll walk to the coffee shop conversations and say, mate, you know, when you just talk about it like that, can we just, that's not really professional. So how do we, so sometimes it is that one-on-one coaching thing by the leadership who now know how our values align. A lot of these things here are driven through when any new employee starts, they get the last 3 staff newsletters, and they're a quarterly newsletter, so they can take it home and read through it. So they get an idea of what our values are actually about, that we value people, and we're about celebrating significance and what they achieve, and they very quickly find out too that any manager can send them and their family out for dinner on us. And you know, we're pretty generous in what we do for our people, very generous in what we do, and so they engage quite quickly, and it spreads quite quickly around, you know. But there's right behaviours and wrong behaviours, and we try really hard to communicate those. But it's a journey, and again, it takes time to integrate that in, you know. But again, a great culture forces out someone who is a problem, you know, I believe.
Do you introduce someone from within your existing group into that business?
Yeah, so sometimes we do a transition lead. So IT Engine, we put a transition lead in there. So it was someone who had another role in group, who'd been in the group for 12 years, and they were integration. And so they were a go-to to help the business come in, and that was for 12 months. Can answer questions like how to do this and how to do that. A lot of face time's required. Yeah, for any business, I think we've got 20-something offices, face time is really important, that we need to have the managers that oversee that office afar need to get there and have face time. You know, my expectation is that every manager knows the name of every person and should know how they're doing. When I used to lead Advance, I'd go to like Lower North, the regional manager, and I'd say, how was Josh? How was Mike? You know, how's Bill going? You know? And I'd have all their names in my book, and I'd go through every single name. And I expect the manager to actually know. And it's not that it's just the car park conversation they've had, you know. But, you know, and that means they go out and ask the questions of people. How are you actually doing, Mike? You know, well, how are you really? You know, and these different things. And that's all about how we are intentional around culture, you know. But yeah, there's lots of things we do. Again, we have crisis support funds, so staff can apply for funding out of that for pretty much anything. And that goes to a committee, and the committee will make a recommendation. That still comes to me, those at the moment, but it's already been recommended by that stage. And we, because we own a security business, anyone who buys their first home, they get a free alarm because that's a highlight of someone's life.
The house, not the alarm.
Yeah. Again, the dinner's out. We have staff awards, and as we have about 27 awards, I think, in the group, and our staff nominate their peers. They're not allowed to nominate themselves, and they can't win if they have not participated. Because we think in a great culture, isn't it about recognising your peers? You know, or nominating your manager because he's really good and things like that. We do the same supply chain, so we have supplier awards. All our staff rate our suppliers. And Sir William Gallagher, you know, the Gallaghers have won a few times from us. And Sir William, I turned up down at Gallagher's in Kakatare Drive, wherever it is, and Sir William said, we never won an award, the security department never ever won an award in Gallagher's, you know, and so they won our advanced security award. So it got up there, and there's all the whole division, and so big tables of food, and there's professional photographers there. It was a really big event too, but it's great to recognise excellence and outstanding in our people, but in our supply chain and different things. And how much harder do those suppliers then work for you? They really do, you know. I try to think all the other culture things. Any manager we have has a $2,000 training allowance for personal development. around that growth mindset stuff, so how they actually are improving themselves. Yeah, it's about 30 things anyway, so again, can't remember. Other questions?
What if you're going through an acquisition with a company that has the ringleader or the ringmaster system currently in place?
Very good question.
You said with this post that you try not to bring in systems too soon.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So one of the things we look when we look at a business is it a circus ringmaster, or does it actually have good bones? Right. If it has bones, it has some managers or different people running different areas, that's got good bones, right? So it's not down around one person, right? Now, depending on what the size of the business, a lot of the ones we're buying are past that single ringmaster position, so usually it's got some systems, or it might have a few ringmasters in it, but they'll usually, the one we've just bought, they're embracing what we're bringing to it, because they see it's going to make their life actually so much easier now too, as we have a platform, you know. But yeah, one of the things we do look at is, you know, has it got good bones, and are you people in different places to run it, lead it, different things. Okay.
When you look at the changing of the people, I guess where you must identify when you take on an acquisition where the people are at. You said you'd take everybody on, but then beyond that, you start to identify.
Generally we don't go, we're pretty straight shooters. To be honest, if we saw there was a role we didn't need, we'd be up front with the vendor on that up front, because otherwise we think that's a bit of bad faith, you know.
Right role, wrong person?
Yeah, well, it can be. That's what I think some of the process going through. So usually the vendor gives us a bit of an insight if there's a bit of a problem around someone, and then we can sit down and talk to that person to understand. Because most people, if the boss thinks there's a problem with them, they realise it's not going necessarily that well themselves too, you know. So I guess how you be transparent and talk that stuff through. Some vendors want to come over, some don't. That's okay, you know. We've done both, you know, and both are successful outcomes. Usually if a vendor doesn't want to come over, we had one in 2014, we bought the company, and the guy said, the vendor, he's a lovely man, he said, oh Mike, I only want to work for you for 6 months. We got through DD, he says, actually I want to work for you permanently. And he worked 5 years till he retired, you know, which is fantastic, you know. So, yeah, look, so we just travel really lightly with that to what vendors want to go to, and what they want. It's been their baby, and you're respectful of that, you know. Yeah, so.
Do you only ever buy 100%?
We have owned businesses before which have mixed ownership. So we started a corporate door maintenance company in 2005 with someone else, you know, and that's fine. Generally, we want to end up probably at 100%, you know. It just depends on the situation. If it's core to us, then the answer is probably eventually yes. And so sometimes what we say is there's different tranches with the vendor, if it makes sense. So.
Do you always start off with 51%?
Oh, well, we're in a minority state with KiwiRail and Spark, and anyways, KiwiRail, I must say, KiwiRail argued about being 75% shareholder, to have shareholder majority, not just majority, you know. And then there's no way we could get them under 51%. They were just so hard-nosed over it, you know. So, but anyway, we're going to go for a share call coming up for phase 3, and if they don't participate, they'll get diluted. So then they'll no longer be 51%. I'm priming Spark up to cough up some more money than them, and we, you know. Yeah. So you can sort of see step change though through acquisition. Yeah, and you know, it's the courage to do that too. You know, so there's competitors out there right now, the sectors you're in, which some of them might well be receptive to doing that. You know, so how do you fund it? What we've done is we have a really strong performing group. So our banking facilities are based on our past, not on our future. If that makes sense, you know. I mean, and we're growing, so we're really, really robust, and we've got a really, really strong balance sheet, so we can use debt really wisely. So we can gear it out of that, or we can gear it out of cash flow in that as well. So there's different ways we can do it, but generally we do it. We have what's called a committed cash advance facility with the bank. It sits up here. That has X million in it, and within 10 minutes that can be in our account to do a transaction. So we don't go to buy a company and not have the money. We already have the money to do the deal before we go there. There's no, now we're going to go apply for finance. No, it's already done. So again, I don't think that's the right thing to do otherwise, you know. We know when we're going into it, if we've actually got to those other stages and agreed price and got to here, we will transact. We will buy it, you know. So.
What about when you were smaller, Mike? If you go back to what your early
We've always
acquisitions?
behaved the same.
Yep.
Yeah. The bank for us, ASB has always supported us, 100%. Never ever. They're not. They've always backed us. But I honestly believe we've always done what we said we were going to do as well. You know. And even just after COVID, we had ASB corporate in, and they were willing to fund, you know, a big deal transactions for us and different things like that too, you know. So, but we moved years away from personal guarantees and the home at risk and different things like that. And those are important, wise things too. You know, I still believe, biblically, we pay our debts and that. So there's these two pieces to that. So don't get me wrong, but but the bank backs us. If that makes sense. So yeah. Other questions? I often use it as you plant the seed and water it, you know, and it's a really good thing, and it's to see what God wants to do with it too. So sometimes you might be competitive, you can plant the seed, you know. We had a shot at Chubb during the level 4 lockdown, and we probably would have to get Commerce Commission approval anyway, but they came back and said no, you know. But about 5 years ago we tried to buy Chubb, and they said ring us back in 3 weeks' time, you know. So you never know what response you're going to get, you know. But it has to be for a reason and the right reasons, you know. And our thing is, how do we build a great business? And TPT's tagline is growing a great group of businesses. It's not just ego, it's not just about buying a business for money, it's how we build a great business. And what's the right components that come together to build a great business, you know. Yeah. All right, no other questions? Easy stuff?
Yeah, we'll go do one this afternoon.
You know, but I come back to where I started at the start of the day is, you know, about dreams. We're never too old to dream, right? Dreams are God's way of saying go for it, and you have to hang on to those. And no one could be as insecure as I was stepping into business, and I honestly mean it. It was such a battle and such a step of faith, right? And God's taken me on this amazing journey, and it's His fingerprints that are all over it, you know, and that's the truth. And that's when I stop and I look back, it's just, you know, it's just really humbling to see. And I get to go to events around the country with our teams of people, and I get to stand in front of them, and it's really always humbling. So. It's me.
Awesome, thank you, Mark.
Now it's me.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm just blown away with what you've shared and the information that you've released to us in such a logical and understanding manner.
Yeah.
And I believe out of here, you're going to see businesses change. The things that you shared with me, you know, we're Abraham and Sarah in somebody's eyes, but I still have a dream. I'm here to make a difference. We said to our grandkids just recently, we're going to grow old disgracefully. So don't have expectations on us and what we're capable of and what we're able to do. And that's how we both think. And when it comes to saying thank you to a guy that we believe's got everything, it's really hard. but we want to share a gift with you.
So I think we should give you food, because, you know, food is what I do.
And
So there's even a little throwback to my past life. Just,
you don't look at Mike,
just
it's,
to let you know that 25 years later, what I started is still actually going.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, which is very cool. I'm not doing it anymore though. But we want to thank you so much.
Very well.
Mike is one of the best communicators, as you can tell by
Yeah.
today. But, you know, for a guy that I need to get a hold of from time to time and figure out we need some notes and this and that and the other thing, is always so willing to get back to me, always willing to have a conversation and not just a yes/no answer. And I believe that that's part of his gifting of business. So I was going to say we should reconvene 12 months from now, but we're obviously going to need a bigger room because we will all have bought a new business or two and we know how to do it. So yeah, we'll work that out. So Mike, thank you very much. Take it home to your lovely wife. I'm not sure if you're the cook or not.
Sometimes, yes.
Yes, but that's you.
Increasingly so, actually.
Oh, right. Yes.
there's also chocolate for you on the way, mate.
Oh, thank you.
And just from me, I want to thank you guys for responding so well to this workshop and coming and being here and making this day so worthwhile. I thought this venue was a nice kind of retreat type venue for us since we missed out on our retreat this year. So, pop question. Should we do a retreat next year?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
At Black's Mill? Yes?
Yep.
Yes?
Yeah.
They're wanting us back? We're here for it.
You know,
Small retreat.
it'll be warmer there.
All right. Okay. The deposit still stands over there and we've got time to use it, so we'll see what we can do. Good.
Yeah, now our day's concluded, but as I've said at the back, I've just had a couple of thoughts, and you know, I don't want you to leave here if you would love to be prayed for. And I just really felt today that there's some prophetic words and some things that God has said into your lives that have stalled. And I want love, and there's a couple of other people that don't know they're praying with me, but Nori's okay, and Josh is okay, and Riss is okay, to come and pray for people and just encourage them in what God's still got in them. So anybody who would love prayer, go into the outside room here. The rest of you just mingle and disperse when you're ready. But I want to just pray a blessing on you before you go. Father, we thank you. We thank you. We thank you for your presence. And Lord, for all that you've declared out of heaven for us. Lord, that still needs to be unpacked. We thank you, Lord, for the wisdom that's been put into us today. Lord, that we can pick up things that we never understood before. Some of the how-tos of how to grow what you put in our hand. And God, your word talks about you, God of multiplication. And Father, I just sense, Lord, today we're going to see great multiplication out of this group. Lord, as seed has been planted, it's time to come and harvest will come. And your word has also said, Lord, there's a season coming when, Lord, the reaper will overtake the planter. So we speak acceleration over these things. Lord, that they won't be just ideas that go away, there'll be activations that go. And people will walk out of this place saying, I've met with Jesus. That's what the disciples did. And when they went out, God, you made them. You made them into what you declared. And I speak that over each person today. That you take them on that journey. That you refresh those dry bones. That you speak into them, each one, Lord. Father, that there's a greater clarity in the heavenly realm. There's a greater understanding of what your words declared. And so, Father, in the name of Jesus, I pray a fresh release over all of these. And I thank you and bless Mike for what he's given us. Father, what we hear today, Lord, is safe in your hands. And so, Father, we look into the future. We fire out that moonshot to each business today. Lord, that we will be the head and not the tail. In Jesus' name. Amen.
If anyone wants those slides too, I can give them to Clark.